From the dojo to the octagon, this is Budocast, your source for the latest in martial arts news, culture, and competition. From breaking fight results to evolving techniques, we cover it all. Let's get into it.
Yes, let's get right into it.
Welcome into the deep dive, everyone. If you're joining us today, you're probably, someone who's really fascinated by the actual mechanics of human movement.
Right.
Or maybe the psychology of extreme stress. Or maybe you just want to know what actually works when things get chaotic.
Yeah, when the chips are down.
Exactly. And today we have a very specific mission. We are looking at this massive, honestly kind of bizarre stack of sources in front of us.
It is quite the stack.
It really is. I mean, we've got event previews for major global MMA promotions. We've got intimate athlete profiles, breakdowns of these totally experimental tournament rule sets.
Some really crazy rules in there, yeah.
Totally. Plus a local news report covering a terrifying act of heroism, and then, randomly, a medical dispatch from the Associated Press.
Right, which sounds like they have nothing in common.
Exactly. On the surface, it's just a random assortment. But what's the unifying thread here?
So the absolute unifying thread that ties all of these totally separate worlds together is the concept of adaptation.
Adaptation.
Yeah. We're going to examine how these ancient, highly formalized combat techniques manage to actually survive in the modern cage.
And how cultural warfare gets gamified into a sport.
Exactly. We'll also dissect how dojo discipline can literally override the human freeze response during a real street attack.
Which is incredible.
It is. And perhaps most profoundly, we'll look at how a fighting style is actively being repurposed right now as neurological medicine.
It's just wild stuff. So to really wrap our heads around this idea of adaptation, I feel like we have to start at the absolute peak of the mountain.
Start with the elite of the elite.
Right. We need to look at how a true world champion adapts, not just physically, but psychologically when their entire world changes.
The internal shifts.
Yeah. So let's head over to Bangkok, Thailand, specifically Lumpini Stadium.
Oh, man. Lumpine.
Right. If you know combat sports, Lumpini isn't just a venue. It's hallowed ground.
It's legendary.
It really is. It's this mythical arena where the greatest Muay Thai fighters have basically spilled their blood for decades.
The history there is just immense.
Totally. So the date we're looking at is May 15th, and we are breaking down the main event of One Fight Night 43 on Prime Video.
And, the stakes for this fight could not possibly be higher.
Absolutely not.
We're talking about Tang. He's 30 years old, and he's defending his one featherweight MMA world title.
Against a terrifying opponent.
Oh, yeah. The man stepping into that cage against him is this truly dangerous Russian contender named Shamil Gasanov.
Who goes by the nickname The Cobra.
Right, the Cobra.
And that is not just for show, is it?
Not at all.
Yeah.
If you look at the scouting report from our sources, Gasanov is a massive, looming threat. He's sitting on an 18-1 professional record.
Wow, 18-1.
Yeah. But it's not just the numbers, it's really how he fights. He is this suffocating, relentless grappler.
Like a literal python.
Exactly. Once he gets a hold of you, the fight just becomes a miserable exercise in trying to breathe. He has victories over incredibly elite names, guys like Martin Nguyen and Gary Tonin.
Okay, wait, I want to pause on that for a second for the listeners who might not actively follow the grappling world.
Yeah, explain Tonin.
Because beating Gary Tonin is absurd. Tonin is widely considered one of the most dangerous, hyper-aggressive submission grapplers on the planet.
Oh, 100%.
He's the kind of guy who will dive on your leg and tear your knee apart in, a fraction of a second.
He's a leg lock specialist. Just lethal.
Right. So the fact that Gasanov navigated that exact level of grappling threat and came out on top, that tells you everything you need to know about his ground game.
It really does.
Yeah.
So what we have here is the classic striker versus grappler matchup.
The tale as old as time.
Right, but executed at the absolute highest echelon of the sport.
Mm-hmm.
Because Tang is very much a striker.
But he's not a brawler?
No, not at all. He is a sniper. If we trace his rise up the ranks, it's nothing short of spectacular. He put together this devastating 6-fight win streak in one championship.
Just methodically picking guys apart.
Exactly. And that streak culminated in him dethroning Thon Lee for the featherweight crown. That was at 160 back in August of 2022.
And people really doubted him going into that one. People thought Thon Lee was basically untouchable.
They definitely did. But Tang just completely shut those doubters down.
Right.
He unified the belt against Lee in their rematch at 166 in Qatar. And he did it with a massive statement.
Yeah, that brutal third-round TKO.
Exactly. A devastating finish. He proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is the undisputed king of that division. And by doing that, he became the first ever male Chinese MMA world champion.
The cultural impact of that alone is just staggering.
Oh, it's massive. When he returned to his home province of Hunan, the sources say there were thousands of supporters in the streets celebrating it.
Like a national hero.
Literally a national hero. But the adaptation we are really focusing on today isn't about his striking or his footwork or even his takedown defense.
Right, because the biggest shift in Tang Kai's life happened entirely outside the cage.
Yeah.
Because last September, he became a father.
And this is where the psychology of fighting just gets incredibly complex.
Here's where it gets really interesting, right? Because fighting, at its absolute core, is inherently a selfish endeavor, wouldn't you say?
It kind of has to be, yeah.
Right. You isolate yourself in a training camp for months, you diet, you suffer, you leave your family behind to focus entirely on your own physical performance.
It's all about you.
Exactly. You are driven by ego, by the desire to prove you are the most dangerous person in the room, and of course, by the singular pursuit of that 26 pounds of gold.
That is the traditional fighter's mindset, for sure. But becoming a parent fundamentally detonates that entire psychological framework.
The burden totally shifts.
It shifts completely.
Yeah.
In the one championship feature we reviewed, Tang explicitly states that his motivations have evolved.
What did he say?
He says, I want my kids to have a better life than I had when I was young. I have to work harder, fight harder.
Wow.
Yeah. He is no longer walking to the cage just for his own ego. He isn't even just fighting for national pride anymore. He is fighting for the literal survival and legacy of his bloodline.
It almost feels like, I don't know, like taking a supercomputer and upgrading the background operating system.
Oh, I like that.
Because the physical hardware is exactly the same, right? Tang still has the knockout power, the fast-switch muscle fibers, the incredible cardio.
The physical tools are all there.
But the invisible software driving the entire machine has been completely rewritten. And my question is, can relying on that raw emotion backfire?
How do you mean?
Well, think about Tang Kai's typical fighting style. He is historically known for this absolute icy composure.
Very calm. Very collected.
Right. He isn't a guy who gets into screaming matches at press conferences. He doesn't fight with anger. He fights like a clinician.
True.
But now you've introduced this massive, heavy emotional anchor. If you're in the cage and you take a hard shot, or Gasanov starts to drag you down to the mat, and suddenly the thought flashes through your mind, if I lose this, I'm failing my kid.
Oh, man.
Right. Does that make you panic? Does that familial responsibility cause you to make a rash decision and leave your neck exposed for a guy literally named the Cobra?
That is the million-dollar question. And it's the exact psychological tension that makes this specific fight so compelling.
It's terrifying, honestly.
It is. Does the immense pressure of providing for a helpless infant cloud your tactical judgment, or does it sharpen your focus to a razor's edge?
Because usually high emotion is bad for technique, right?
Biologically and psychologically, high emotion usually severely degrades fine motor skills. When you get angry or desperate, your technique gets sloppy.
You swing wider.
You swing way wider, you breathe heavier, you lose your balance.
Which, against a grappler like Gasanov, is a death sentence.
An absolute death sentence. If you rush Gasanov because you're fighting on pure emotion, he will duck right under your punch, take your hips out from under you, and you will spend the next 4 minutes staring at the ceiling lights.
Just getting crushed.
Exactly. But the sources actually give us a critical clue that Tang Kai might be insulated from this specific trap.
Really? How so?
It comes down to his team. He represents this sunken international fight club. And if you look at their specific training methodology, they heavily emphasize martial maturity.
Martial maturity? Okay.
Yeah, they prioritize strict discipline over raw aggression. And Tang himself actually addresses this in the interview.
What does he say?
He notes that fatherhood hasn't made him wilder or angrier. It has actually made him, quote, more mature and having more responsibility.
So the discipline is the firewall.
Exactly. The discipline is the firewall.
Yeah.
He explicitly states that no matter what changes in his personal life, he is, quote, still me.
He's relying on that cold, calculated foundation.
Yes. So your software upgrade analogy is totally spot on. But he isn't installing a chaotic emotional program. He's installing a deeper, more profound anchor to his already existing discipline.
Right. He wants to be a role model.
Exactly. He wants to be a role model for his child and for the next generation of Chinese fighters. And you cannot be a role model if you fight with blind rage and get submitted in the very first round.
Yeah, you just can't. It's just incredible to put yourself in those shoes, though. Just imagine stepping onto a canvas mat barefoot. The cage door literally locks behind you.
It's a terrifying feeling.
And staring at you across the cage is a man who has dedicated every waking hour of his adult life to rendering you unconscious.
Right.
And you're tethered to reality. Your anchor to survive that chaos is the image of your baby at home. That is a staggering internal evolution.
It truly is. It's profound. But, while Tang Kai's adaptation is entirely internal and psychological, our next source takes us in the exact opposite direction.
Okay, where are we heading?
Let's look at an athlete whose evolution is entirely physical and stylistic. We're moving from the very top of the MMA mountain down to a fighter who is actively climbing it.
Right.
Someone who's transitioning from a deeply rigid traditional martial art into the sprawling, chaotic rule set of modern MMA.
Right. Let's bring in the profile from Black Belt magazine on Andrea Meneses.
Yes.
So she is 27 years old, originally from a town called Gava, which is right outside Barcelona in Spain.
A great fighting city.
Yeah. And she is currently fighting in Combat Global's atomweight division. Now, for the listeners, the atomweight division is 105 pounds.
Which is incredibly light.
Very light, which means these fighters are insanely fast, highly technical, and their cardio is usually just off the charts.
You do not get tired.
No, they don't. And she's slated to fight an undefeated American named Janet Garcia.
And Meneses is leaving absolutely nothing to chance for this one. She actually uprooted herself and moved to Miami, Florida to train at Goat Shed Academy.
Which is a very intense jump.
Very intense. She calls this the best camp of her professional career. She's coming off a tough, unanimous decision loss to Kayla Kaira Caracho, and she realized that to truly evolve, she needed to completely change her environment.
Right, because back in Spain, her training partners were mostly amateur women.
Exactly. And Goat Shed provides this grueling, high-level professional room. But to really understand what makes Meneses tick, we have to look backwards. We have to look at the martial DNA she's bringing into that room in Miami.
Yeah, her origin story is fantastic. She didn't grow up wanting to be a cage fighter at all.
Not even a little bit.
When she was just 8 years old, she was taking a walk down the street with her grandfather in Gava. And they just happened to walk past a local neighborhood Kyokushinkai Karate dojo called Kyoto.
Just a chance encounter. But that encounter changed the entire trajectory of her life. Her family was actually pushing her toward traditional Spanish sports, soccer, volleyball, things like that.
Right, the usual stuff.
But she looked inside that dojo and was instantly captivated. And a massive part of that early connection was the instructor there, Sensei Herman Calado.
And under his intense, very traditional guidance, she didn't just participate, she excelled.
She dominated.
Yeah. She spent years competing in dozens of regional tournaments, consistently winning. She became a 2-time national champion, winning the Copa-sation in 2013 and again in 2015.
And she actually earned her black belt when she was only 16 years old.
Which is crazy young.
It is. And the article specifically mentioned she had to perform this nerve-wracking kata exam to get it.
Okay, so for anyone who hasn't been in a traditional dojo, can you explain what that actually means? Because a kata isn't just sparring, right?
Oh, far from it. A kata is essentially a highly choreographed solo demonstration of forms.
Right.
It's a very specific sequence of defensive blocks, strikes, and stances performed against imaginary opponents. And, it sounds simple.
Yeah, just punching the air.
Right, but at the black belt level, it requires absolute, agonizing perfection. The judges are scrutinizing the exact angle of your wrist,
Wow.
the depth of your stance, your breathing patterns, your balance. It is a test of supreme neurological control and focus under the pressure of hundreds of eyes watching you in total dead silence.
That sounds terrifying. So she has this incredibly deep, entrenched foundation in pure, rigid, traditional martial arts. But then the mid-2010s happen.
Right.
And like an entire generation of female fighters, she sees footage of Ronda Rousey.
Of course, the Rousey effect.
She sees Rousey tossing women on their heads and snapping arms in the UFC, and that was the catalyst. It convinced Meneses to make the terrifying leap into MMA in 2017.
And she was a natural. She actually won her amateur debut by locking up a guillotine choke on her 21st birthday.
What a way to celebrate.
Seriously. She only needed 4 amateur fights before turning professional. She initially trained under retired fighters Oriol Gasset and Ramon Monero at the Uppercut Training Center in Barcelona.
It sounds like a really smooth transition on paper, but...
Yeah. But biomechanically and tactically, moving from Kyokushin Karate to mixed martial arts is notoriously brutal.
Okay, wait, break that down for me. Because to the average person, a punch is a punch and a kick is a kick. Why is that transition so incredibly difficult?
It all comes down to the rules of engagement and how those rules literally program your muscle memory over years and years.
Okay.
So Kyokushin is one of the most respected, tough-as-nails striking arts in the world. It is famous for its devastating kicking power and brutal body conditioning.
Right, they just stand there and hit each other.
Yes, but in standard Kyokushin competition, punches to the face are strictly prohibited. You can kick to the head, but you absolutely cannot punch the face. Because of this rule, over decades, the optimal stance evolved. Kyokushin fighters often hold their hands much lower, near their chest or ribs.
To defend against body punches and liver kicks.
Exactly. And they manage distance with their footwork to avoid the head kicks.
But in MMA...
In MMA, you are wearing tiny 4-ounce gloves, and punches, elbows, and knees to the face are entirely legal.
Yeah.
If you stand in a cage with 4-ounce gloves and keep your hands down at your chest, you will be knocked unconscious in about 15 seconds.
Just immediately sparked out.
Instantly. Meneses actually talks about this in the interview. She literally had to overwrite her body's default settings.
That's so hard to do.
It is. She had to learn to bring her hands up high to protect her chin, which completely changes the entire geometry of how you throw a punch, how you balance, and how you defend takedowns.
Right.
And on top of entirely rewriting her striking stance, she had to learn the incredibly complex systems of wrestling, grappling, and cage wall defense from absolute scratch.
If you've ever, tried to learn a new language, you know how hard it is to stop yourself from using your native vocabulary, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now imagine having to do that physically. Imagine trying to stop your body from reflexively dropping its hands when a punch comes at you, something it has done defensively since you were an 8-year-old kid on its tatami mat.
It requires immense neurological elasticity. And, there's a massive cultural tension here, too.
Oh, for sure.
The sources highlight that modern MMA is very rarely the favorite sport of traditional senseis.
Yeah, they usually hate it.
They do. Traditional martial arts are built on deep respect, bowing, mutual benefit, self-perfection. Modern MMA is often viewed by traditionalists as overly brutal, chaotic, or culturally toxic.
Right, with all the trash talk and the blood.
Exactly. Yet her traditional instructor, Sensei Collado, fully supported her transition.
And I think his support is the secret sauce here, because she took the values from that dojo with her into the cage. Collado enforced a strict culture of respect. There was absolutely zero tolerance for bullying lower ranks.
You had to check your ego at the door.
Right. And that mental framework is exactly what anchors her in the grueling, highly competitive, and let's be honest, sometimes deeply toxic world of professional MMA gyms.
Precisely. She had to modify the physical techniques, but the psychological foundation she built with her grandfather and Sensei Collado, that is permanent.
It gives her that quiet confidence.
It does. She says that when she steps into La Jaula, which is the combat global cage, she has absolutely zero hesitation about throwing her hardest kicks.
Because she's been doing it forever.
Right. She isn't worried about losing her balance or getting countered because she has drilled the mechanics of those specific kicks tens of thousands of times since childhood.
It's so common right now for modern MMA purists to jump on social media and just bash traditional martial arts.
Oh, constantly.
They call them useless in a real fight or totally outdated, or they call them Mick dojos. But looking at Andrea's story, I totally disagree. It feels like learning a traditional martial art before transitioning to MMA is exactly like learning classical piano before you try to become a jazz musician.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Right. You can't just sit down and play jazz. You have to learn the strict, rigid rules of the instrument first. You have to learn the scales, the posture, the agonizing discipline of playing Mozart exactly as it's written on the page.
The foundation.
Exactly. Only after you have mastered the rigid rules can you effectively, beautifully improvise in the chaos of a jazz club. Or, in this case, the cage. Meneses couldn't improvise her striking in MMA if she hadn't spent a decade perfecting the rigid technique of Kyokushin.
That is a phenomenal way to frame it. The discipline provides the structure, the cage provides the canvas for the improvisation, and Meneses herself completely agrees with you.
Really?
Yeah, when she was asked about the critics of traditional martial arts, she acknowledged that starting straight in MMA is a great starting point for some. But she explicitly stated she wouldn't be the professional athlete she is today without the fundamentals and discipline of karate.
It gave her the grit.
It gave her the grit to survive the transition, yes.
So Andrea's story proves that an individual can successfully adapt a highly rigid art to a modern sporting cage. But, That raises a much bigger, much more difficult question. What happens when you try to adapt an entire culture's martial art? What happens when a lethal, weapon-based system of combat tries to sanitize itself just enough to become a globally recognized sport?
This is where the story of Filipino martial arts, or FMA, becomes incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, let's get into this.
According to the Deep Dive by Black Belt magazine, FMA occupies a very strange space in the martial arts world right now.
How so?
Historically, it is widely recognized by combat experts as one of the most effective, lethal, and practical weapon-based systems ever created.
It's no joke.
It really isn't.
Right.
It forms the foundation for elite military combatives worldwide.
Right.
Law enforcement agencies study it, and Hollywood absolutely loves it.
Oh, yeah, like the Bourne Identity movies.
Exactly. If you watch The Bourne Identity, or even trace back to Bruce Lee's iconic weapon choreography, you are fundamentally watching Filipino martial arts.
But despite being literally everywhere, it didn't have a unified global sporting platform.
Right.
It didn't have the Olympic prestige of Korea's Taekwondo or the massive stadium-packing, gambling-fueled appeal of Thailand's Muay Thai. FMA was highly fragmented.
Highly fragmented and honestly deeply tribal.
Very tribal.
And that is exactly the problem that Ferdinand Mansayak set out to solve. Now, Mansayak is not just an entrepreneur. His background is incredibly intense.
Yeah, he's a serious guy.
He is a retired U.S. Navy chief with 20 years of service, and he's a veteran of the Persian Gulf War. In 2014, he returned to the Philippines and established something called Juego Todo under his UGB corporation.
And his mission statement for this is just massive. He wanted to professionalize the sport, give underprivileged fighters a way to actually make a living, and unify a community that he candidly admits has been totally fractured by a toxic my system is better than yours mentality.
Right, a tribalism.
Yeah. And you have to respect the hustle because it is actively working. They have held over 100 events representing 52 different countries with a roster of over 500 fighters.
That's huge growth.
They even secured official recognition from the Philippine Games and Amusements Board. But here is the massive hurdle we need to discuss. How do you take an art designed for life or death knife and stick fighting and turn it into a sport that doesn't result in fatalities every single weekend?
You have to engineer an entirely new framework.
You have to build it from the ground up.
Exactly. You have to adapt the lethality into a point-scoring system. And to do this, Mansayak created a highly specific escalating 3-round format. It is a masterclass in controlled chaos.
Break down the mechanics of those rounds for us.
Let's do it. So, round 1 is called Doble Baston, which translates to double sticks. Both fighters enter the arena wielding 2 rattan sticks. Now, the absolute core philosophy of FMA is that every single stick strike is conceptually treated as a blade.
Which changes the math entirely.
Completely. Because if that stick is actually a machete, a single strike to the head is instantly fatal. Therefore, in round 1, absolutely no strikes to the head are allowed.
Because the fight would be over in 1 second?
Right. However, fighters are fully permitted to throw body kicks, knees to the torso, and execute takedowns while managing these 2 weapons. And there is a fascinating rule here. Intentionally or accidentally dropping your stick results in a heavy point penalty.
Okay, wait, hold on. Let me push back on that rule.
Go for it.
Because I get that in a pure sword fight, dropping your sword is bad, obviously. But if we are allowing takedowns and knees, what if my weapon gets jammed up in the clinch?
Right.
What if I actually want to drop the stick so I can use both hands to grab a plumb clinch and throw a knee, or execute, like a judo throw? By penalizing a fighter for dropping the weapon, aren't you artificially trapping them in a sports mindset? Aren't you preventing a natural combat adaptation?
It's a very valid critique, and it's one that MMA purists very often bring up.
Right.
But you have to view it through the lens of weapon preservation. Mansayak's argument is that in a true life-or-death scenario, discarding your primary weapon is almost always a catastrophic error.
Even for a throw?
Yes. Because yes, dropping it might give you a better grip for a judo throw, but if your opponent still has their blade, your judo throw won't matter because you'll be stabbed in the ribs on the way down.
Yeah, that's a good point.
The penalty enforces the strict discipline of weapon retention under extreme duress. You must learn to grapple with the weapon, not inside of it.
Okay, that actually makes perfect tactical sense. You are forcing the fighter to solve the grappling problem without abandoning the art's core tool.
Exactly. Then we transition to round 2, solo baston, or single stick. The intensity and range change dramatically here. Each fighter now has only 1 stick.
So one hand is completely free.
Right. Because one hand is free, the rules open up a lot. Fighters can now employ limited, empty hand strikes, devastating elbows, sweeps, and much more aggressive takedowns. It perfectly simulates losing a weapon or transitioning to a closer, dirtier range of combat.
But again, still no weapon strikes to the head.
Still no weapon strikes to the head. And then the pressure cooker completely explodes in round 3.
The Mano-a-Mano round.
Yes. Mano-a-Mano, meaning hand to hand. In this final round, all weapons are completely discarded. The fight shifts into full contact, standard mixed martial arts rules.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Punches and kicks to the head are now completely legal. Takedowns, ground and pound submissions. It is a brilliant escalation of conflict. You start at long-range dual weapons, move to mid-range single weapons with dirty boxing, and finally end up empty-handed on the mat.
It is brilliant, but it has faced immense resistance from the old guard, right?
Oh, absolutely. When you introduce padded gloves, protective headgear, referees, and a subjective 10-point must-scoring system.
Where judges award 10 points to the winner and 9 to the loser.
Right. When you add all that, traditionalists revolt. Purists argue that by adding these safety nets to a system designed for warfare, you inherently strip away its soul.
It brings up a really tough analogy. Let's unpack this. Is this like taking a wild apex predator wolf from the mountains and slowly domesticating it over generations until it's just a really aggressive guard dog?
That's a great way to put it.
I mean, sure, the guard dog is useful, it looks great in the yard, it keeps the house safe, and it won't bite the neighbors. But deep down, by breeding out the danger, haven't you fundamentally destroyed the wolf?
That is the exact philosophical debate tearing through the FMA community right now. But Munsayak counters that argument with a profound, undeniable truth.
What's his counter?
He says, evolution is not abandonment. Evolution is survival. Historically, FMA was practiced in brutal, unregulated duels known as Juego Todo matches.
Which translates to anything goes.
Right. And these matches frequently ended in severe, crippling injuries or death. Munsayak points out a very grim reality.
Yeah.
You cannot build a global sport, and you cannot pass an art down to the next generation if your athletes are literally killing each other in practice.
Right. Dead athletes don't win gold medals.
Exactly. Dead athletes don't pay gym dues. By preserving the essence of the footwork, the angles, and the intent, while removing the unnecessary catastrophic risk, the knowledge survives. Furthermore, Munsayak champions a concept he calls truth under pressure.
Truth under pressure. I really like the sound of that. What does it actually look like in practice, though?
It means that a traditional choreographed flow drill looks beautiful in a demonstration.
Sure.
2 masters clashing sticks in perfect rhythm is highly cinematic. But it doesn't test the fighter's spirit, their cardiovascular endurance, or their true adaptability. A Juego Todo champion is someone who has proven what actually works when the resistance is 100% real.
When the other guy is actively trying to take your head off.
Right. It strips away the theory and leaves only authentic application, to use your analogy. The wolf might be a guard dog now, but when an intruder kicks down the front door in the middle of the night, you find out very quickly if that dog still remembers how to bite.
The sport becomes the crucible. It's the proving ground where ancient theory is forced to prove its worth in real time. Before we dive deeper, shout out to our sponsors. First up, Elite Sports, leaders in premium fight wear for BJJ and MMA. Whether you're rolling or striking, they've got gear built to move with you. Check them out at elitesports.com. And if you're a school owner looking to optimize your dojo's performance, you need to check out Lotus by Open Black Belt. It's the ultimate management software for tracking ranks, attendance, and billing. They are currently offering a free trial to our listeners. Streamline your business so you can spend more time on the mats. Visit openblackbelt.com to start your trial today. You can find links for both in the show notes. And if you've got a story, news tip, or question, send it to us at Budocast.com.
Awesome.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So, for the first half of our discussion, we've spent a lot of time dissecting how you build the perfect set of rules.
Right, the controlled environment.
Exactly, how you adapt martial arts to keep fighters safe, how you score points, and how you test skills in a sporting arena. But what happens when the rules completely disappear?
The ultimate test.
Yeah. The ultimate test of any martial art isn't in a cage with a referee ready to step in. It is the absolute terrifying chaos of a real-world life-or-death scenario. And that brings us to the breaking news out of Katy, Texas.
This is an extraordinary story. It was reported by Global News, and it perfectly illustrates the leap from the dojo to the street.
It's unbelievable.
It involves a family of highly decorated black belts in Taekwondo who literally stopped an alleged sexual assault in progress and saved a woman's life. We are talking about the An family, who own and operate the Yongin Taekwondo Dojang in Katy.
Let's look at the family unit first, because this isn't just one guy acting alone. This is an entire family of martial artists.
Right.
You have Grandmaster Han An, who is 59 years old and holds an incredibly rare 8th degree black belt.
Which takes a lifetime to achieve.
Literally a lifetime. You have his wife, Han An, who is 55, and they have 3 children, Hannah, Simon, and 18-year-old Christian.
The incident unfolded on an otherwise totally normal Tuesday. The family was inside their dojang, likely conducting classes or training, when they suddenly heard desperate, terrifying screams coming from the cell phone store located right next door in the strip mall.
And this is where the first real adaptation happens, the psychological override.
Yes.
Because in modern society, when people hear screaming, the unfortunate reality is that the bystander effect often kicks in. People freeze.
They pull out their phones to record.
Yeah, they record it or they just wait for someone else to act. But the Anshin family didn't hesitate for a microsecond. They rushed out of their dojang, charged into the cell phone store, and burst into the employee's back room. And they found a 19-year-old suspect, later identified as Alex Robinson, already physically on top of a female employee.
What follows next is a phenomenal tactical breakdown of combat adaptation.
Walk us through it.
So Taekwondo, as most people know, is globally recognized as a dynamic, distance-based striking art.
Right, the Olympic sport.
Yeah. It is famous for high-flying, spinning kicks, rapid footwork, and maintaining range. But in a cramped, enclosed employee's break room with an attacker pinning a victim to the floor, high kicks are completely useless.
You literally don't have the space.
Exactly. Grandmaster Han An had to instantly adapt his striking background into a close-quarters grappling and pinning scenario.
Right. The distance was entirely collapsed. He immediately engaged the attacker, grabbed him, and physically dragged him off the victim. But chaos rarely cooperates, does it?
Never.
In the violent scuffle, the attacker actually slipped completely out of his shirt, breaking Han's initial point of control.
And this is the critical moment right here. When a grip fails in a real fight, untrained people panic. They scramble.
They flail around.
Yeah. But Han demonstrated profound combat intelligence. When the shirt failed, he instantly adapted and grabbed the suspect's pants to establish a new anchor point.
Let's break down the biomechanics of that, because grabbing the pants isn't just a random act of desperation, is it?
Not at all. In grappling, especially when someone isn't wearing a sturdy uniform like a gi, you have to find physical anchor points on the human skeletal structure to actually control them.
Okay.
The hip line is the body's absolute center of gravity. All explosive movement bridging, standing up, throwing a strike, it all originates from the hips. By abandoning the useless shirt and violently anchoring his grips to the waistband of the pants, Han completely immobilized the attacker's ability to explode upward or escape.
And he didn't just hold the hips. The report specifically notes that Han kept one of his own arms completely straight, framing against the attacker.
Yes. Framing is a foundational concept in grappling. If you try to hold a thrashing 19-year-old down using only your bicep muscles, you will exhaust yourself in 30 seconds.
Your arms will turn to jelly.
Exactly. Muscle fatigues incredibly quickly under adrenaline, but bone does not. By locking his arm out straight, Han created a solid bone frame connecting his shoulder to the attacker's body. He was using skeletal structure, rather than muscle, to keep the attacker pinned and to block any incoming counterstrikes.
That is amazing.
That level of situational awareness under severe adrenaline shows the profound difference between just memorizing forms in a dojo and possessing true adaptable combat literacy.
But the most incredible part of this whole story to me is that it wasn't just the father playing the hero. The entire family acted as a cohesive tactical unit.
It really did.
When the suspect, in total desperation, tried to bite Han on the arm, the son, Simon, immediately stepped in and delivered a hard strike to the attacker's chin, physically shocking him and stopping the bite.
And while that physical confrontation was happening on the floor, the 18-year-old son, Christian, had the incredible presence of mind to immediately run and lock the front door of the store.
Think about the situational awareness required to do that.
Under that much stress, it's crazy.
He is literally watching his dad and brother fight a criminal, and his instinct is, secure the perimeter. He locked the door to ensure no accomplices could enter and to prevent the attacker from fleeing if he managed to break loose. It's like a police tactical team.
It's exactly like a tactical team. And simultaneously, the mother, Hong An, recognized that the victim was deeply traumatized and still in the danger zone.
So she steps in.
She took physical control of the victim, evacuated her out of the store, and brought her next door into the safety of the dojang to perform emotional triage and comfort her. Meanwhile, Hans successfully maintained top control, pinning this much younger, desperate man to the floor for a full 10 minutes until the Harris County Sheriff's deputies finally arrived.
10 minutes in a physical struggle feels like 10 hours.
It is an absolute eternity.
It really is. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez publicly praised the family as good Samaritans, who perfectly utilized their training to stop horrific assault. But you noticed something interesting in the aftermath of all this, right?
It did. What stands out vividly is the almost frustrating humility of the family during their press interviews.
Frustrating how?
Well, the daughter, Hannah, told reporters, "I think everybody's calling us heroes, but still, I think anybody can do it." It is a beautiful, humble sentiment. But from a purely psychological and physiological standpoint, she is entirely wrong.
Why? Because of the adrenaline dump?
Exactly. When a sudden, violent event occurs, the human body experiences a massive adrenaline dump. Your heart rate spikes instantly to 150, 160 beats per minute.
Your body thinks it's dying.
Right. When that happens, untrained people experience severe physiological degradation. You get tunnel vision. You experience auditory exclusion, where you literally can't hear what's happening around you. Fine motor skills completely evaporate.
You drop your keys, you can't dial a phone.
Exactly. The fight-or-flight response often results in the freeze response. Your cognitive reasoning short-circuits entirely. The reason the Ann family was able to act so decisively without panicking is because of the thousands of hours they have spent on the mats.
They inoculated themselves to stress.
Precisely. They have spent decades practicing discipline, managing physical exhaustion, and learning exactly how their bodies move through space under pressure. They didn't have to think. They just had to execute.
So what does this all mean? To me, they operated like a perfectly synced pit crew at a Formula One race.
Oh, that's a great comparison.
Nobody had to stop and yell instructions over the screaming. Everyone instantly knew their role. The youngest son secured the perimeter. The mother handled victim extraction and triage. The father established top control of the threat. And the older brother acted as the enforcer to stop dirty attacks.
Flawless execution.
That kind of unspoken, synergistic action doesn't happen by accident. It only comes from years of bleeding, sweating, and moving together on the mats. And honestly, it makes me want to ask everyone listening right now.
Put him on the spot.
Yeah. Put yourself in that dojo. If you heard that terrifying scream coming from the store next door right this second, what would your muscle memory tell you to do? Would you have the mental software installed to push open that door and act? Or would you freeze, pull out your phone, and just hope someone else handles it? It's a very sobering reflection.
It definitely forces a mirror up to our own preparedness. The Adine family successfully adapted their sport-focused traditional striking art into a real-world close-quarters grappling tactic to save a stranger's life.
Which is amazing.
But as incredible as that physical adaptation is, our final source takes us in a direction that is perhaps even more miraculous.
The final frontier.
Yeah. We've seen martial arts used to win championship belts. We've seen it used to build global sporting leagues. We've seen it used for violent, real-world self-defense. Now, we are going to look at martial arts being utilized as cutting-edge medical treatment.
Yeah, when I read this source, it completely blew my mind.
It's wild.
We are looking at a dispatch from the Associated Press out of Brazil. The report details how the martial art of capoeira is being actively prescribed and utilized to aid patients suffering from Parkinson's disease.
Yes.
Now, for listeners who might only know martial arts through, watching the UFC, can you give a quick primer on what capoeira actually
Yeah.
is? Because it looks completely different from karate or boxing.
Capoeira is arguably the most visually unique martial art on the planet. It was developed in Brazil, primarily by enslaved Africans and their descendants.
Okay.
Because they were strictly forbidden by their oppressors from practicing combat or defending themselves, they brilliantly disguised their martial art as a dance.
Adaptation born out of pure survival.
Exactly. They hid lethal kicks, sweeps, and evasions within these complex, rhythmic, acrobatic movements, all performed to the beat of live traditional music and singing.
So to a guard, it just looks like a party.
Right. It was so effective and deemed so subversive that the Brazilian government actually outlawed the entire practice of capoeira for a period of time.
Wow.
Yeah, completely banned it. At its core, the fundamental movement of capoeira is called the ginga. It's a constant, rhythmic, side-to-side rocking step that requires immense balance and coordination.
And that specific requirement for balance is exactly where the medical application comes in. Because Parkinson's disease is a devastating neurodegenerative disorder, It aggressively attacks the central nervous system. It literally robs a person of their motor control. Patients suffer from severe tremors, muscle rigidity, and incredibly dangerous loss of balance. It slowly strips away a person's bodily autonomy.
It's a terrible disease.
It is. So, how does a disguised martial art fight back against a neurodegenerative disease?
The sheer poetry of this adaptation is just astounding. Parkinson's degrades the basal ganglia in the brain, making it incredibly difficult for the body to initiate movement or maintain fluid balance. The brain's internal cueing system basically breaks down.
It loses the signal.
Right, but the Brazilian patients in this AP report are finding that capoeira provides the exact external cues their brains desperately need. Because capoeira is entirely reliant on extreme weight shifting, fluid transitions, and complex motor coordination, it forces the body to constantly recalculate its center of gravity.
So they're essentially tricking the brain.
In a way, yes. We call it neuroplasticity. Because capoeira incorporates a heavy emphasis on rhythm, clapping, and music, it engages multiple different areas of the brain simultaneously.
Like a full system workout.
Exactly. It lights up the auditory cortex, the motor cortex, and the areas responsible for spatial awareness all at once. This massive multisensory engagement acts as a neurological bridge. It helps these patients completely bypass the damaged neural pathways in their brain and literally rewire their brain-body connection.
That is unbelievable. It's like taking a brutal iron sword that was forged purely for violent warfare, melting it down in a furnace, and recasting it into a delicate, life-saving surgeon's scalpel.
That's a beautiful analogy.
An art form that was literally outlawed by the state because it was deemed too dangerous to society is now being used to give society's most vulnerable, suffering members their physical independence back.
It really challenges our definition of what martial arts can be. These patients aren't just doing sterile, repetitive physical therapy in a cold clinical room.
Right, counting reps.
Yeah, they are engaging in a culturally rich, musical, communal expression that demands balance and flow. And the results are tangible improved mobility, reduced rigidity, and a reclaimed sense of joy.
Which is priceless.
It really makes you wonder, if capoeira can rewire the brain to fight Parkinson's, what other ancient traditional movements or forgotten practices hold the key to modern medical breakthroughs that we simply haven't bothered to explore yet?
What a profound thought to end on. As we pull back and look at the entire journey of this deep dive, the overarching theme is undeniable. We started in Bangkok, watching Tang adapt his cold, clinical striking to carry the heavy emotional burden of a father fighting for his child's future.
Right.
We watched Andrea Meneses rewire her childhood muscle memory to survive the cage. We saw Ferdinand Munsayak painstakingly adapt the lethal blade culture of the Philippines into a regulated sport to save it from extinction.
A huge undertaking.
We stood in awe of an 8th-degree black belt in Texas who instantly adapted a sport into a life-saving weapon. And finally, a Parkinson's patient in Brazil fighting for their own physical balance using a forbidden dance.
The human body and the human mind are infinitely adaptable, and these martial systems across all cultures are simply the formalized vehicles for that adaptation.
Totally.
They take our most primal, desperate instinct, the instinct to survive, and they refine it. They refine it into something that can win a world championship, something that can neutralize a violent predator, or something that can heal a degenerative disease.
Martial arts is never just about the physical fight itself, it's about what the fight preserves. So we want to leave you with a final thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. If martial arts are ultimately just a vehicle for human adaptation, a way to continually upgrade your physical and mental software to handle the chaos of an unpredictable world, what part of your own life could benefit from the discipline of the dojo right now? Where in your life are you relying on outdated software? Think about it.
That's it for this episode of Budocast. Thanks for joining us as we break down the latest in martial arts. We'll be back soon with more news, stories, and insights. Until then, train hard, stay humble.